maybe just happy International Children's Day. I'll introduce myself. My name is Annal. I'm the Business Development Executive for IDC. I cover Northern Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. So International Children's Day is a day where we celebrate the well-being and rights of children. The day is celebrated to help bring awareness to end child abuse and to end deprivation of children of their rights, and making efforts to improve the lives of children all around the world. As financial advisors, how can we help children and secure a better future for them? Well, we can offer them all types of good products from all the different carriers that we have access to. Certain products that we have access to are like RESPs to help limit the burden of post-secondary costs. We can also offer insurance, which is what we're going to be talking about today. The benefits of insuring a child. Now, when I speak to a lot of advisors, they do bring up the problem that they have of having that conversation with parents. Talking about insurance and the unthinkable, like a death of a child. But we can always switch the conversation to make it more positive, I guess, because you can use insurance to create cash values, almost like a savings account for children, and or protecting the insurability, which is what Jenny's going to talk about today. So I'd like to introduce Jeny Yeung, who is the business development person for Beneva, covering Vancouver, I believe, just Vancouver. Is that correct?
The Lower Mainland and the Okanagan.
Okay. So yeah, Jenny, take it away.
Thank you. I feel like you've already done my presentation. I was like, you know what? You've talked about everything I talk about. I was like, we're just going to shut this down now. We'll just finish it. Now, thank you for the introduction. Again, my name is Jeny Yeung. I am the Senior Director of Business Development for Beneva, formerly SSQ, which I will talk about in a little bit. I'll explain a little bit about the company. So today I am going to talk about protecting insurability with Beneva. My territory, like we mentioned, is I am in BC. So good morning, everyone. Good afternoon for anyone who is not in my territory or in my time zone. My territory is the Lower Mainland and the Okanagan. So I would be your contact person on the insurance side for anything related to insurance for that particular region. Like I said, we're going to talk about children's insurance today. Today is International Children's Day. So happy International Children's Day. When I was looking at these slides, I realized that I typed these really fast. So I apologize if there's typos and words that probably don't make sense. But ultimately, today is really all about the children's well-being and rights, like Annal had mentioned, and really talking about the efforts and improvements that we can do when it comes to children around the world. Facts about children and population. So if you are interested in having information about International Children's Day, I actually obtained most of this information from a website that does talk about it. So, we're talking about the fact that there's 140 million children born a year. Alarmingly, 5 children die every day due to child abuse. And so just again, the International Children's Day is really about awareness of the fact that, we want to make sure that children, it's about the well-being and the rights and about, the abuse that could happen in situations like this. So again, facts such as 1 in every 10 children involved in child labor because of poor economic conditions, which we hear quite a bit about. 155 million children worldwide are victims of stunted growth because of malnutrition, which we also hear about. So that is kind of part of what International Children's Day is really all about, is just creating that awareness, because we know that children are our future, according to Whitney Houston as well. It's a great initiative. And it's really a whole day dedicated to children. And I feel as though that, it's definitely, I feel children are a gift, and truly is something that we should be a little bit more aware of. We live in North America, so we're very fortunate as far as what happens to us, but just creating that awareness around the world. So that is about International Children's Day today. And so a little bit about who we are, the company I work for. Maybe you've never heard of Beneva. Maybe you already know so much about us. Is we are formerly SSQ, another company called La Capitale, both from Quebec. We came together and built a new brand we've named it Beneva. So that started as of January of this year. And so SSQ and La Capitale as a company no longer exist. And as far as like for us and who we are is the fact that we are two companies that had a really long history and a very similar history. We've been in business for over 75 years. And so just creating this new brand and creating this great amalgamation of who we are. And that being said, is this really created a really great opportunity for us in the fact that, you know, with everything that with the merger coming through is we are now obviously, or maybe not obviously, but we are the largest mutual in Canada. And I think it's one of those situations where when you hear a new company, when you hear a new brand, you've looked at other companies before as you merge together, not acknowledging the fact that how much bigger we've become. So that's kind of really what has been a really good experience for us, and the fact that us merging, making us the largest mutual in Canada. So if you are having conversations with your clients and then you are looking at positioning Beneva, we are a large company since we've merged, and we are definitely I always joke about this with some of my other carrier friends, because every once in a while they'll like send me a picture or like send me a text and we're like, hey, I saw your banner, and I'm like, that's because we're slowly taking over the world, because we are growing and we are in that situation where we want to grow bigger and bigger because we are in a really good position right now. So a little bit about who we are and what we're all about. If you do want more information, or if you want a copy of these slides or whatever it is, just to show the positioning of who we are, please let me know. More than happy to. I will show you contact information for your contact person in your territory at the end of my presentation. So what are we going to talk about today, which Annal kind of discussed a little bit when we talk about children's insurances. Some of the challenges and conversations, the opportunities of what we want to look at when we are talking about insurance. I'll spend a little bit of time on statistics. I don't want to spend a huge amount of time. I just find that that doesn't really sell, but just from a knowledge and conversation perspective, sometimes it's kind of nice. Beneva solutions. So what we have to offer through Beneva as far as how you can look at positioning our product shelf, and then risk selection, which is really our underwriting. So perhaps maybe you guys are already familiar with it. So I'm going to list a couple of like, I guess, childhood illnesses, how we look at it, how it gets reviewed, and then how we look at from an underwriting perspective, just as a general knowledge as far as how we look at underwriting for kids through Beneva. And I find sometimes those are kind of useful. As I was prepping for this presentation, I talked to one of my head underwriters and I'm like, hey, do you have a couple minutes? Because I really want to know kind of where we sit, maybe certain things that are like not in our underwriting guide, because as much as a guide is useful, sometimes having that conversation with the underwriter, giving you a little bit of perspective as far as like things that maybe I don't see on a regular because they are underwriting and I don't. So hopefully towards the end, when I talk about this risk selection and the underwriting, give you a little bit more information and food for thought as far as like underwriting and about juvenile underwriting as well. So that is ultimately my agenda for this morning. So if there are any questions, please utilize the Q&A, and I'm sure everyone's probably used to this. And the reason why I say Q&A is just because if there are any questions that maybe I'm unable to answer at the moment, or if there's follow-ups, it does track the Q&A questions, and so they can generate a report. So if I need to follow up that way, there is some track record as far as what your question is. So if there are questions, please make sure that you just use the Q&A box.
Okay, and I just wanted to interrupt and just add that there will be a poll that will pop up for Quebec advisors only, and they will have to answer a couple questions on that poll in order to get your credits. Again, that's for Quebec advisors only.
Perfect. All right. So then if you guys do see this pop up, again, Quebec advisors only, just because this is CE accredited for Quebec. So don't feel like I'm popping a quiz for you. I think it's just for your CE credits. So continuing with this conversation about challenges and opportunities when it comes to children insurance and children in general when it comes to health. As I was going through this presentation and putting this together, some of the things where it's like, okay, well, as I go through Google, like what are the health concerns that really come up when it comes to talking about children? So asthma, hand, foot, mouth disease. Apparently it's pretty common. I think my cousin and his kids had that. So diarrhea, obesity, allergies, ADHD, chickenpox, fevers, 15 other ones. So like, as we are looking at, I'm just showing you what it looked like on Google as I listed it. So you know, I didn't make this up. So like, you know, when you're looking at childhood health concerns, you know, I will address probably some of them when I talk about the underwriting portion of it. So when we look at things like that, you know, besides the fact that, you know, as we have kids, as we're trying to raise the kids, you know, dealing with the everyday daily stuff and then the health kind of coming into situation. So let's just try to see what we can do as far as like making the conversation an easier conversation when we have these, when the subject comes up. So obviously the main challenges would be, it could be a sensitive topic, like as Annal had mentioned, you know, no one ever wants to be a situation where like, well, I don't want to buy life insurance for my kids. Like, I don't want to talk about the fact that they're going to die. Absolutely. This is not what we're trying to cover. You know, there are other ways to really convert this conversation over to something a bit more positive. Maybe just some legitimate doubt as far as like, maybe it's something that they really want to do. Just objections in general as far as maybe why they don't want to do it, and then maybe doing a long-term commitment at time of uncertainty, because I do presentations often and you know we talk about what's happening in the world right now. There's a lot of uncertainty when it comes to the markets and everything else that's happening. Maybe this is because the child is so young, it might be a long-term commitment that they may not want to utilize at this moment. So maybe multiple different reasons as far as like why you want to take a look at, you know, children's insurance. And then the reasons why you want to buy it. I think the second one is pretty self-explanatory, which has been a conversation piece anytime you talk about children, is ensuring the insurability of the child. You know, it's one of those things when you never know what's going to happen. As much as we never want anything bad to happen to our kids, you know, it's one of those things where it's a just in case. You know, I have lots of conversations with, you know, I have friends who have children. And then we talk about like a couple of my friends who have children who are diagnosed with autism. And then autism, obviously, we don't look at from an insurability perspective till later. And then so we'll have conversations about that. And I was like, you know, if you're getting the insurance early, may or may not be an issue because now you've insured the insurability of the child. Maybe COVID, maybe that's a different perspective as far as like, you know, changing your mindset in regards to getting insurance, because we have lived through COVID the last 2.5, 3 years. And then cost, because we all know that with insurance, the sooner you get it, the less expensive it is. So, you know, these may be really good reasons, good conversation pieces to really talk about purchasing life insurance for kids. So when we talk about a need, you know, when we talk about adults, typically when we're looking at insurance for adults, the objective is financial security upon their death. Because if they're taking care of their spouse or children, the insurance is really meant to be put in place so then, you know, they can take care of their family, their loved ones. When it comes to children, ultimately, it really is talking about insurability, because I have a niece, she's 16 now, but when she was born, it was one of those conversations and situations where it's like, let's look at getting some insurance for her. She's still a baby. Let's look at the insurability. We never knew what was going to happen from now until like, you know, now she's 16, time goes by fast. But like, it really is about just getting that insurance in place and that insurability type of situation. And then, you know, benefits for the clients, just to make sure that, you know, you can get paid up coverage. That way that's all said and done by the time, you know, the child becomes an adult. RESPs had come up. I was mentioned in the beginning, tax deferred growth, again, depending on what you want to look at and what vehicle you're utilizing when it comes to the insurance. And then like, you know, there's a transfer of ownership with no tax implications as well, as long as you have the contingent owner as the child when they become an adult. So multiple different reasons why you really want to look at putting something like this in place as well. Education, we kind of mentioned that as well. I mean, when it comes to strengthening relationship through enriching conversations, when it comes to like education and money, again, you're not having this conversation with a newborn because they have no idea what's happening. But, if this insurance is being put in place for an older child, might be a really good conversation piece. And the fact that if you're saving towards or adding additional money where you're looking at using that money later on in life to maybe use it towards partially down payment for a home, or maybe putting it towards buying their first vehicle, whatever that is, I think education is huge and conversation pieces are really important. Protecting the insurability, I feel like that's going to be a bit of a broken record just because that is kind of one of the key things that we do want to look at when it comes to insuring children. And then also business continuity as an advisor. So you probably already deal with the parents, and then as far as like getting the policy in place for the kids, moving on to the next generation. So really good opportunity for future. That way, you continue that conversation as the children get older and as the parents get older. So then it really allows you to have that continuities for your own business. And then obviously potentially getting some referrals from like other families or other people that they talk to as well. So again, like I said, on the statistics portion of it, I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time on this just because I find when it comes to stats, it's not something that we really want to spend a huge amount of time on, because I find stats typically kind of freak you out, and that's not what it's meant. That's not what we want to do, especially in conversations like this. So I just put up a couple stats in regard to childhood cancer mortality, life expectancy, any of those kind of things, just to give you some little bit information. But again, I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time. A copy of our presentation will be available. So if you really want to read through each one of these, absolutely feel free, but I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time on this. What I am going to move on to is what we have to offer on our Beneva side as far as Beneva solutions for putting something in place for kids. So here's a question for you. This is not the quiz, it's just a question. Which insurance product for children gives you access to the following advantages? Level cost of insurance with the guaranteed premiums up to age 100, up to an additional $250,000 of insurance with no medical evidence of insurability, 25% of the face amount payable in the event of a childhood disease, so critical illness. Excuse me. 50% of life insurance face amount if the insured has an extreme disability. And so the reason why I bring this up is that actually is all the features that are available within our universal life product. So if we're looking at what the premium is for a 2-year-old, so this is basically our level COI for our universal life. So you can see on the very top of this page, this premium was done on December 21st, 2022, which was just not too long ago. Our premium hasn't changed since then, so I didn't really bother changing it. So just in case someone's like, it's from 2022, our premium hasn't changed. I did double check it before I actually put this presentation up. So when we are looking at a situation where we want something that's guaranteed across the board, and the really great thing about what Beneva has to offer is we have some really great additional features that really get added as complementary. So you can see on the illustration here, it says complementary benefit for children. So if you're going to sell a universal life policy with us for children, you get all these included benefits. So there's an insurability benefit that's included, a critical illness benefit that's automatically included. We do have an extreme disability benefit that's automatically included. Privilege in case of disability clearly doesn't apply to children, but obviously once this policy transitions into an adult policy, when the child becomes an adult, maybe this could be a situation that it can utilize if there is a disability. We also have situations where, within our contract, we have a 10-year GIA where we guarantee 1%. I get it, 1% is not huge, but if you want to put something that's guaranteed across the board, this is something you can take a look at. And the premium being $25.21 is not, something that hopefully is a reasonable premium. This is based on a $50,000 level cost of insurance. Obviously, if you're looking at something higher, the premiums will be a little bit more. But ultimately, the reason why I'm bringing up this conversation is really the fact that within our universal life, we have these great additional features. If you decide you want to exercise the insurability benefit, you have 5 times that you can exercise it to a maximum of $50,000 per offer. like I mentioned, we have that critical illness that's automatically included. Is 25% of the face amount to a maximum of 50,000. That's also included. This isn't meant to replace like CI at all, but if you're getting additional coverage, why not have something in place that you didn't have to pay for? And the extreme disability benefit, same situation where, that is automatically included if for whatever reason, as this transitions into an adult policy, it becomes 4 out of 6 activities of daily living that we would pay at a death benefit, an early death benefit. When it comes to our CI, these are the 7 cover conditions that's included. So again, if you're looking at purchasing this universal life where it has this included benefit to a maximum of 50,000, these are the conditions that we cover. Again, not meant to be a full CI policy, but if you're already purchasing a product and if you get some additional benefits, it's kind of like, I always use buying a car as an analogy. So like if you buy a car and they throw in some free things, like, I don't know, floor mats is a thing. Do people care about floor mats anymore? But like if they throw in floor mats or in additional little things within your car, that's kind of what we have when we're looking at things like this, where you're looking at purchasing the universal life plan for the purpose of really putting that insurance in place, maybe building in some cash values, but we also add that insurability benefit, that critical illness benefit as well.
Jeny, I got one question. For
Yeah.
that cancer, is it like certain types of cancer that's covered, or is it any degree level, just general in cancer?
Yeah, so it's the same definition as like the standard one. So it's like life-threatening cancer. So when
Okay.
it comes to any of our CI, when it comes to any of these definitions, it's the same as every other standard definition of cancer. So there's no like specific ones. It's just the usual definitions with life-threatening cancer.
Okay.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. The next thing I want to move on to is what we have to offer as far as on the life insurance side. We don't have a participating whole life policy. We do have a non-participating. So this conversation with whole life would be related to non-participating. So we have a 20 pay and the page to age 100, so a life pay. So again, that situation where we look at guaranteed premiums across the board. We have cash value starting in year 11. Paid up coverage reduced starting in year 11. Again, that extreme disability benefit, that is something that we have on all of our life insurance products. So I may be repeating myself every time I talk about life insurance with the extreme disability because it is an included coverage or included benefit with all of our life insurance. And so I always explain non-par whole life is like a picture. So you take a picture today, you take a look at the picture 10, 15, 20 years from now, fine, there might be some discoloration, but at the end of the day, the picture will look exactly the same. So with a whole life, a non-participating whole life, that's exactly what it is. So when you get a policy, you're looking at, this would be a life pay. And this is like 50,000 life pay for the same 2-year-old female child. 2367, you're going to take a look at that. You're going to pay that premium, and everything you see here, all the cash values, all the paid up protection, that won't change. Kind of like that picture example, like I said, because what happens is everything is guaranteed across the board. So when you have situations, you're having conversations with your clients, again, obviously depending on budget, what is it looking for? This is a good option when you want something where the clients want guarantees across the board. And therefore, if they take a look at this policy 10, 15, 25, 30 years from now, it's going to look exactly what you've presented to them with no variation as long as they pay their premium. And again, like I said, everything starting in year 10, year 11. And so giving you those paid up protection and then giving you those guaranteed cash values across the board. So giving you an idea, if we're doing a life pay, 2367, if we're looking at doing, let's say, a 20 pay for the same 2-year-old, it'd be $40.95. Same type of situation, where we look at everything will be exactly as it's pictured. Nothing will change from the perspective of like the fact that all the guarantee cash values will be there. So if you have clients that really want that guarantee and that consistency and the no variations, where what you get, what you bought is what you get, with no awkward conversations, I think that this may be a good option to take a look at. And then assuming, depending on life pay or 20 pay, and that's all paid up and done in 20 years. So another thing that I like to bring up is child riders. I think there's definitely some value in time and place for something like this. You know, if there's a budget issue, or if they have multiple children, they want to put it all under one policy, just to kind of keep it simple. And then that way, when their children become older, they can deal with their own individual policies. But for now, you want to put something in place for the kids, and maybe just not something that where you want to get something right now, where you just want, like I said, a little bit of insurance. So a child rider is a really great option to take a look at. Our face amounts range from $5,000 to $25,000, and it covers all dependent children. So our premium, when you, I mean, it obviously is on the software, but if you want to do a little bit of math, ultimately $50 for the first 5,000. So obviously that premium doesn't change no matter how many children you decide to add. And then if you want additional face amounts, then the premium does increase by $4 for every additional 1,000. The really great thing about this is the fact that you may have one child now and then you have another one later. What happens is you can add your newborn children automatically, and they will be insured after 15 days or leaving the hospital, whichever is later. So if they leave the hospital within 2 days, then you have to wait 15 days. So situations like that, where you can actually just automatically add any additional child if you already have one already in place for this child rider. Obviously, there is a conversion option, so you can convert this without evidence of insurability up to 5 times the coverage to a maximum of 100,000. And the coverage does expire at age 25 or upon marriage. So if they get married before 25, then obviously that's when the policy will expire for that child. Some additional benefits, which is included in this child rider, is the fact that if the child has been hospitalized for 30 days in the 12 months before death, we do pay an additional death benefit. It is $75 per day of hospitalization. So that's kind of additional death benefit we do pay if the child is hospitalized. Another thing is there's an automatic waiver of premium. So if there's a death of the parent, then basically the waiver of premium will kind of kick in, and then therefore that child rider policy will be in place due to the waiver of premium until the child turns 25, or if they decide to convert it, etc. So those are automatically included with this child rider. So again, giving you a little bit more options when you're looking at putting something in place. Oh, here's your Quebec question. So that just popped up. Good timing, so I can transition to my next topic. So anyone who is Quebec licensed, please make sure that you answer this question, just questionnaire, and to fill in your AMF number so you can get your CE credits. So I'm going to close that because I am not Quebec licensed. No, I'm just going to close it. Anyway, so again, giving you food for thought as far as what your options are when you're looking at life insurance coverage. So if you want to look at our universal life or whole life, or looking at adding a child rider, that's a great option to take a look at. Transitioning to the next topic when we're talking about critical illness. And I find that, I think everyone's done such a great job in having the conversation of CI, that there's been some really great CI policies in place for adults. But taking a look at the conversation for kids, again, for the same reasons, ultimately insurability, cost. We all know that, as they're younger, things are definitely less expensive. So looking at CI for that reason, absolutely really great idea. So one thing I will say about our CI, and this applies to our adult CI and our children's CI, is we haven't changed our CI in about 10 years, which means we haven't changed our our pricing, and we haven't changed our definitions. So we are still on the original benchmark definitions when it comes to CI. So really great reason why you want to take a look at us, or two reasons. Number one would be the fact that our cost hasn't changed. And number two would be the fact that we're still on the original benchmark definitions. And so information about our CI is permanent insurance, permanent coverage only. So T75, T100, T100 paid up, and as a 20 pay, so you can do a quick pay. We are 28 illnesses. You can add return of premium on death, return a premium on cancellation. So those are kind of the things that you can add. I just listed our 25 standard covered conditions and then the 3 additional ones for kids. So loss of independence is automatically included in our 25 because I do get asked that a lot as well. So situations such as this, like I said, we haven't changed our pricing. So I kind of went on, I'm always very curious about, where we sit, especially since I talk about CI quite a bit and the fact that I know that we haven't changed our pricing in a while and where we sit price-wise. So I have Life Guide. So I pulled up Life Guide a couple days ago just to see kind of where we sit when it comes to where our child CI lies. Keeping in mind, obviously, we're 28, where some carriers are at 30. But when we're looking at just pricing, taking away, I think when you look at Life Guide, sometimes it's not, again, depending on how you, do the criteria and stuff. So I had a couple where there was they had the 4 illnesses and some of them had the return of premium on death. I was just looking at straight coverage, no ROP on it. We came in with the process of elimination. We came in top 3. So again, keeping that in mind as far as pricing, because we know that CI pricing has changed quite a bit over the last 5 to 10 years. Mainly because, everyone on this call has done such a great job in having the conversation with CI, really kind of created that need for critical illness. And so that being said is if you're going to buy a policy with us, like I said, we haven't changed our pricing, that premium will be guaranteed for the lifetime of that policy. So you're looking at T75, T100 with a 20 pay, you kind of guarantee the insurability and also guarantee the cost as far as what that's going to look like. So maybe another reason why you want to look at us and want to look at insurability when it comes to CI for kids. I am not a doctor or professional physician in any way, nor do I understand the full legal or the full doctor medical language, but looking at where the benchmark definition was and where it is today, because it changed in 2018. You don't have to read through this whole thing, but giving you an idea of what has changed as far as where there is some a little bit more leniency in the older definitions. I will send you guys a copy of this. You don't have to read through the whole thing, but just giving you an idea of kind of where we sit when it comes to these definitions. I'm not going to go through each one of them, but definitely the cancer one comes up in conversation, like that one question I had about, what kind of cancer do we cover? Because that seems to be a big question, which is why I put that cancer slide up there. So again, another reason why you want to take a look at this. Like I mentioned in the beginning of this presentation, we are going through a merger. And so typically when you go through a merger, my first thing is try to mesh the systems together and get the brand together, which is what we're doing right now. The next thing is really to look at reviewing our products, because on both sides with both companies, we both had very similar products. So far, based on this merger, most of the former SSQ products have kind of stayed in place. Where we kept that, and a lot of Capital products are just, we didn't really adapt and move over to the new Beneva brand. So we changed our UL last year already. We're probably going to have a conversation about a term at some point this year, because it's been a few years since we looked at our term. After that, I have a funny feeling that we may look at our CI after that, because we are in that merger situation. I would suspect that's kind of going to be what's going to happen. As far as what we're going to do, what that's going to look like, I don't know. But this is one of the reasons why I like talking about CI, especially for this year for us, just because there's so many different reasons why you want to look at it. So this is just an example. You've probably been staring at the screen for a while. And the fact that we've got that 2-year-old, we've got Sophie here for the $50,000 face amount, adding return of premium on death, return of premium on termination cancellation. premium difference between the T100 and the T120 pay, and then looking at if you decide to exercise the returner premium at age 55, what the yield would be if you guys want to take a look at that. Another reason why you can see it says premium in force as of June 26, 2019. The reason why I didn't change that or update it is because our pricing hasn't changed. I did double check it before, obviously, I put this presentation up just to make sure that that was correct. And I knew that it was, but I just want to make sure as I'm talking about it, is the fact that this is from 2019. We're in 2023. It's the exact same premium. You run the quote today, you're going to run the exact same premium that I'm running today. So having that, as I'm saying, our premium hasn't changed for a long time, really does show it, because this presentation that was originally created with this premium was from 2019. And so take a look at our CI if you haven't. Have the conversation whether we're looking at children again, because what happens is, A, the insurability portion, B, the cost, because again, CI has changed quite a bit. And, having that conversation really makes a difference. If you are a fan of return of premium upon cancellation or surrender, but not a fan of return of premium on death, just to give you an idea of the fact that if you're looking at that T100, it would have been $371.08. And if you're looking at the 20 pay, $513. So again, not a huge amount of difference, but if you do want to save a little bit, if that's something that's not overly important, you want to get rid of that rider, that's where that's the premium difference between the two. If you're not a fan of the return of premium on death, and rather put that extra little bit towards insurance, maybe. Assisted benefit is just something that we obviously had as our version of Best Doctors. So basically it comes with the CI coverage. So for legal assistance, concierge service, medical referrals, second opinions, all those things. So we do have that obviously included with our CI. And then this is our version of like an early detection payout. So we call this a supplementary benefit, 10% up to a maximum of 50,000 in the event of either one of these. So early skin cancer, early breast cancer, early prostate cancer. So any of those things is kind of included with our CI. Another option, if you don't want to get like the standard CI for the child and the parent is already looking at getting a CI coverage for themselves, you can add a CI rider. So we call this a child endorsement instead of just a plain CI rider. And so basically it's an alternative to like getting full standard child protection. So really what this does is you get to choose between 5,000 and a maximum of 50,000. And so it covers those illnesses that you see on the screen. So that is really what you can add as an option. If you decide that you don't want to go through a fully underwritten policy for a child and giving you an option to do so. Another rider that I really want to bring up is accidental fracture. I have a counterpart in Alberta, and I think I don't know how often he talks about this, but he talks about it a lot with us when we talk about CI and kids. He has a nephew that apparently is like a tornado on 2 feet. So he's always like running around everywhere and like bumping into things and hurting himself and whatever. And then so when we talk about adding coverage for kids, he was like, I would absolutely add this accidental fracture situation for my nephew because he's always bumping into things, doing things. And so like a really great option if you're looking at adding additional coverage for kids, kids are active, that could be something that could be beneficial where it's just not necessarily tornado and 2 feet, but it could be where kids are a little bit more active. Accidental fracture may be a good option. It's an inexpensive option to take a look at if the budget allows it. So a good option to take a look at when you're adding and layering the benefits when you're having conversations with your clients. This is our underwriting guide for CI. That's available on our software, on the Advisor Center, so that you can all access easily. So just giving you an idea as far as where underwriting lies. And then, as I say, underwriting, I'm moving into my last topic for this presentation is talking about risk selection. So really talking about underwriting. And I've listed a few childhood I guess, illnesses or concerns when we're going through this. So little bit of, as far as application declaration when it comes to family history. If the parents are under 40, we don't need to know about the grandparents' medical history. Situations like asthma, like in the beginning of presentation, I was like health concerns with kids. One of the things was asthma that came up. So what happens is I'm having this interesting conversation with my underwriter. And so like this cut and paste is really from our underwriting guide. So I didn't put anything in there that wasn't already available to you on our underwriting guide. So he was like, oh, we don't underwrite kids that are like from 0 to 5. And I was like, what do you mean? I'm like, so if the child has asthma, and he explained to me, he was like, so what happens is typically, and maybe some of you already know this on the call, maybe a bit more experience than I am when it comes to children and asthma, is when it comes to asthma, you have to like, there's a machine or equipment that you have to test for asthma. You have to breathe into it. And so generally with younger kids, it's hard to like figure out and get them to breathe properly into these machines. And so this is kind of why it's a little bit harder for us to look at underwriting for asthma for like kids between 0 and 5. So typically what we say is like 5 and above is kind of what we want to look at. And then also part of it is it's also a leading cause of hospitalization in that age group. And then again, it's hard to diagnose and hard to treat because a lot of it is the fact that they have to test to see if the child is asthmatic. So that's kind of where we sit when it comes to asthma, just an FYI. And then arthritis, because I was looking through the underwriting guide and trying to figure out like what kind of conversations can I have about children and underwriting. And so really ultimately what happens is it's very rare that children have arthritis, but if it does happen, basically we will basically look at it later and we will postpone it until they get a little bit older. Autism, conversation that happens quite a bit, like according to underwriting, we will look and consider a child after age 9 if the diagnosis is at least 1 year old, depending on the severity of the autism. So mild cases can be considered standard, moderate cases we would rate, and then some severe cases we would decline. So perhaps that's pretty standard in the marketplace, but just giving you an idea just in case, because I do get some questions sometimes when it comes to like how we look at autism. ADHD, without any complications and it's well controlled, it would be standard. Otherwise, we would postpone until age 16. So that's, again, off our underwriting guide. So if you want some information on that, that would be all on there. And this is all based on life coverage. I didn't put anything on CI, but this is everything I've spoken about when it comes to this underwriting is specifically related to life. Diabetes. So I had this conversation. I was like, well, what about childhood diabetes? What happens with that conversation? And they're like, well, if there is type 1 diabetes for children, there is a significant rating. So we would be probably on the higher end when it comes to rating for type 1 diabetes for children, just because it is a higher risk factor. So we're looking at a plus 300. So I was a little surprised about that, but I kind of understood that conversation. Another thing that I want to ask was when I was talking to my underwriter, I'm like, hey, so like obviously our bill chart starts at age 18. Is there anything we can get before that? Because it's rare, it doesn't happen that often, where like sometimes, some children are like considered underweight. And so like, where do we sit when it comes to our bill chart? Can we get a copy of it? And so my underwriter was like, well, the reinsurance that we use, basically they kind of changed it where it's a BMI calculation. So basically we base it on a BMI calculation. And one thing that he did say was when we were talking about it, he goes, when you are doing an application for the child, just make sure that when the parents give you the information, that it is a current, height and weight for that child, because sometimes there could be a situation where it's been like 6 or 7 or 8 months since the last time you kind of weighed the child and measured them, and sometimes it doesn't seem correct based on like the height that you told them or whatever it is, and then we have to go back and just to clarify. So that's one thing that he did mention. He's like, make sure that if there is information provided, sometimes we do get situations where the information is like maybe sometimes a year old, and then it doesn't correspond properly to like the height and weight of the child. Epilepsy. So basically it's deferred for the first 6 months, but then otherwise we will take a look at it depending on what and how well it's, how well it's controlled, what's happening. So that's something. And then another one that he brought up, which I would have never thought of, was he was talking about heart murmurs. And so he goes, we get that sometimes where, sometimes there are situations where babies will have a heart murmur. And then we typically, when it comes to a heart murmur, which this is not on the underwriting guide, which was kind of nice, which was really helpful when I had that conversation with him, because that was the whole point of why I want to talk to him about it. Underwriting guides are underwriting guides, so they're pretty standard. You got to get some of the information on there. But, having that conversation with him where he's just like, oh, by the way, sometimes we get these heart murmur conversations in an underwriting. And so if there is a situation where there is a heart murmur, we typically will postpone till like 6 or 7. But once everything is good, then it'll be standard across. So with no issues. So again, I don't know how often that happens, but it seems to, since he did bring it up. So just so you know, that's kind of how we look at heart murmurs. Again, not on our underwriting guide. So it was a nice one to add for me, especially since we're having these conversations. Gestational diabetes. So I do get these conversations actually quite a bit where people ask me like, my client's pregnant, she was just now diabetic because she got gestational diabetes. What do we want to look at? So basically, if it's stable and it's well controlled without any complications, we would be standard. Otherwise, we would look at it and it would fall under the type 2 diabetes category for life. And if you're looking at CI, that's a little bit different in the fact that we will look at it after, before delivery, after delivery. So when it comes to life, which typically is most of my questions when it comes to life insurance, or like, if my client's applying for life insurance, what's going to happen? Do they have to wait or whatever it is? So that leads on to my next slide where we talk about if they're pregnant, can they apply for insurance? Absolutely. Like, as long as there's no complications in their pregnancy and it's not a high risk pregnancy, they can absolutely just apply, as long as, again, no complications during the pregnancy. So no issues when it comes to something like that. The only thing that we have as far as a caveat would be if you're looking at disability, that's kind of where we would make sure that we wait until the baby is born. And then another thing is financial underwriting. So typically I will get asked also a lot of like, what's the maximum if my client wants to buy insurance for their kids and like they have this or they have that, do they have to have the same amount, whatever it is? So I thought this was really useful, is basically for us when it comes to financial underwriting for kids is same as parents' total life insurance maximums to same as a parent's total insurance to our maximum, which is 500,000. You can obviously justify more if you wish. However, then we just need to make sure we get cover letter or more additional information. But standard wise, typically our maximum is 500,000 for kids. So that's kind of how we really look at it when it comes to financial underwriting. I'm going to end off with talking about a recognition program. This is something that we just launched this year. It's actually kind of like a merge of what SSQ formerly had and then what La Capitale had, and we kind of just meshed it together. So basically we have a recognition program. It's kind of like a loyalty program that we have, and there's 2 parts to it because obviously we do insurance and we do investments. So there's kind of 2 components to our bonus or loyalty program. There's one that's insurance only, and there's one that's like investment only, and there's one where if you do both. So giving you an idea of the fact that if you are doing business with us, it's always nice to get a little bit more. That's what I always say. Like, if you like us, you're already doing business with us, if we're going to give you a little bit of a bonus, it's kind of nice. So if you are doing 12,000 to 24,999 of FYC with us, and this is the first year you've done business with us, there'll be a 20% bonus. Anything above 25,000 FYC is 25,000, anything above 50,000. So this is kind of how we tier it. And then the following year, if you do another 12 to 24,000, it's a 25%. So a loyalty type of consecutive years is what we're looking at, and your percentage gets higher. So if you're in the first tier, starts at 20%, and then it maxes out at 35%. Between 12,000 and 24,000 of net FYC. There is a little bit more of a caveat in the fact that you do have to write a minimum of 12 policies with us for the year. So within this 12,000 to 24,000, has to be 12 contracts. And then again, the loyalty as far as maintaining that year over year to make sure that you maintain your bonus level. So if it's due to investments, it is based on premium brought in, so dollars brought in. So again, not going to go into a huge amount of detail. I think this one is a little bit more self-explanatory, depending on how much you bring in, which equals $1 is one sales credit. So again, it's easier to kind of go through it. So a minimum of 1 million, then 0.16, and if you bring in 3 million, etc. So it kind of gives you an idea. And if you do a combination of both, then basically it gives you a bit of a both. So just want to go in summary and recap kind of really what I really talked about today is Beneva's solutions when it comes to children. On the life side, we have a non-par whole life, we have universal life, and we have that CI rider. Again, multiple different reasons why you want to take a look at us. And then also have those conversations about insuring children. Critical illness, we have 25 covered conditions. Loss of independence is automatically included. Children's endorsement, which is our version of a CI rider. Again, we are still on the original benchmark definitions. Our pricing hasn't changed in about 10 years or so. So if you haven't taken a look at RCI, please take the opportunity to take a look at it. We're on Life Guide. If you want to download our software, you don't need to have an advisor code. You could actually download it right off our public website. So really great ways to take a look at us for multiple different reasons. If you have any questions, please reach out to me or whoever your contact person is. Here is our Western team. So basically BC, Alberta, Manitoba, Saskatchewan. If you don't know who your contact person is, these are our people. And then here is our Ontario and Atlantic team. I apologize for the Quebec people. I don't have the contacts for Quebec, but if you do need them, either reach out to me or anyone through IDC. They could probably hook you up with your contact person in Quebec. So that's kind of all I really had for you guys. I just want to say thank you for your time. Thank you for taking the last 52 minutes to listen to me talk about insuring children and the options we have within Beneva. So are there any questions that I might have missed? Annal, was there something on there that I should answer?
No, Jeny, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I think that, this was great in the fact that I appreciate the opportunity because we are a new brand. And so just kind of getting out there and the fact that people understanding and knowing who we are and we are much larger than people assume that we are. And so appreciate everyone's time and just really appreciate it all.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jeny. Ken says you're awesome as always. So
thank you. All right. Well, enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. And thank you so much for your time again. Take care.
Take care, guys.